Chapter 1. The Perfect Life Cracks. The night began like any other, clean, predictable, and controlled. Reed Croswell's home sat on the ridge above Pacific Heights, a fortress of glass and steel overlooking the dark shimmer of the city. Inside, everything reflected precision. The scent of aged bourbon, the rhythmic tick of a wall clock, the faint hum of servers from his private office downstairs. Reed liked order. It was his armor. After 20 years of building Croswell security from nothing, after desert sands, ambushes, contracts, and boardroom wars, he had learned that discipline was survival. He had also learned to trust no one completely. But he had made one exception. Vivian. He'd married her 12 years ago, when Croswell security was still a lean operation, and he was just a man with a soldier's discipline and a dream. She was beauty wrapped in elegance, sharp, ambitious, and alive in ways that softened him. Together, they built everything. Or so he thought. Tonight, she was at a charity board meeting, her text said. Reed had smiled, typed "take your time," and gone back to reviewing contract reports. That was when an encrypted alert blinked across his monitor, a private signal that came only from one man. Damon Willis. Reed leaned forward and entered his 12-digit decryption key. The file unfolded a live drone feed. The timestamp was current. Location: Blake Russo's condominium, downtown. Reed's eyes narrowed. Russo was his attorney, his legal advisor for a decade, and a man who had shared whiskey and golf weekends with him. The footage showed a woman in a long, ivory coat stepping out of a black Mercedes. Even before her face appeared under the light, Reed knew her walk: elegant, confident, slightly impatient. Vivian. She entered the building. 2 minutes later, Russo appeared at his balcony window, wearing a robe, lighting a cigar. Reed sat back. His jaw flexed. He said nothing. Then his phone vibrated. Incoming call. Damon Willis. He answered. Go ahead. Damon's voice came low and professional, the same tone he'd used in field ops years ago. I thought you'd want to see this before it went too far. How long have you been watching? Reed asked, his voice calm but thin as wire. 6 weeks, Damon said. I didn't believe it either. But she's been visiting him every Tuesday and Friday night. She uses a burner phone. Payments trace back to a private offshore account under her maiden name. I've got logs, transfers, and surveillance footage. Reed stared at the screen as the feed looped, Vivian laughing, her hand brushing Blake's arm as they entered the condo. His expression never changed. You recorded audio? Yes. You'll want to hear this. Damon paused. It's not just an affair, Reed. There's more. A lot more. Reed's hand closed into a fist. Send everything. Secure line. Already did. File labeled Viper. I'm here if you need me. Reed ended the call. The silence of the office felt suffocating. The air conditioning hummed, low and constant, mocking him with normalcy. He opened the Viper file. Audio played. Voices, faint but clear. Vivian. He'll never suspect. He trusts Blake completely. Blake. Good. Because once the new trust agreement is filed, half of Croswell's security falls to you. The judge will finalize it. Vivian. Judge Wilson owes you, doesn't he? Blake. He'll rule in our favor. Money talks. Vivian, laughing softly. And if Reed finds out? Blake. He won't. He's too busy being the noble soldier. Reed stopped the audio. The bourbon bottle on his desk called to him. He poured 2 fingers into a glass, then more, until it was half full. The amber liquid caught the glow of the city lights, the reflection of a man no longer sure of the ground beneath him. He didn't smash anything, didn't shout. Rage was noise, and Reed Croswell didn't do noise. He sat down again and watched the footage from start to finish. Once, twice, 3 times. Every movement, every gesture cataloged and burned into memory. At 1:17 a.m., the door of the penthouse opened quietly. Reed. Vivian's voice floated in, soft and careful. He didn't answer. She appeared in the doorway, radiant in her cream coat, cheeks flushed from the night air. Her perfume reached him before her words did. You're still awake, she said, smiling. You shouldn't work so late. Reed took a slow sip of bourbon. You're right. Long meetings, huh? Her smile faltered for half a second. Yeah, the charity expansion. You'd be proud. We secured new donors. He nodded. I'm sure Blake was very persuasive. That caught her. Her eyes flickered, just a moment, but enough. Blake? What do you mean? Nothing, he said smoothly, turning away. Just business talk. You should rest. She hesitated. You've been different lately, she said quietly. Cold. Distant. Is something wrong? Reed met her eyes, those same eyes that had once promised loyalty. Nothing's wrong, he said softly. Not yet. She forced a small laugh, leaned in to kiss his cheek, then went upstairs. Her heels echoed on the marble like a ticking clock. Reed waited until he heard the bedroom door close. Then he exhaled, long and silent. He walked to the window overlooking the city, his city, and felt the first real fracture in years. He'd survived betrayal before, on battlefields, in contracts. But this was personal, intimate, poison served with a smile. His phone buzzed again. A text from Damon. Wanting to dig deeper? Retype back. Everything. Financials, offshore accounts, comms, Judge Wilson's connections. Quietly. Then he deleted the conversation, encrypted the files, and locked the office. Upstairs, Vivian slept peacefully in silk sheets, the picture of innocence. Reed stood in the doorway for a long time, studying her like a stranger. Her hand rested on the pillow beside her, where his used to be. He turned off the lights and went to the balcony. The night air bit his face. Below, the city pulsed with distant sirens and the throb of hidden life. He whispered to himself, You made a move, Vivian. I'll make mine. The next morning, no one would suspect anything. Reed would kiss her cheek, drive to the office, attend meetings, and play the perfect husband. But something inside him had changed forever. The line between love and strategy had been erased. Later that night, Damon sat in his own dark office, watching the same footage again. He muttered to himself, You shouldn't have crossed him, lady. You have no idea who you're playing with. Back at the Crosswell estate, the fireplace burned low. Reed poured another drink, slower this time, and watched the flame flicker. He spoke softly to no one. No confrontation. Not yet. Let them think they've won. Let them feel safe. He set the glass down. His reflection stared back at him from the dark window, controlled, dangerous, reborn. A man once loyal, now calculating. A soldier once defending, now preparing for war. Chapter 2. The Setup. The morning sunlight spilled through the tall glass windows of the Crosswell mansion, warm and golden, too gentle for the storm it illuminated. The city skyline glimmered in the distance, the world still turning, unaware that Reed Crosswell's had already stopped. Vivian hummed softly in the kitchen, dressed in one of his shirts, barefoot on the marble floor. She moved with the casual grace of someone who believed her act was flawless. Coffee? She asked, turning as if nothing had ever gone wrong, as if her every word didn't echo in Reed's mind from that recorded conversation. He glanced up from the newspaper. Sure. Her voice was light, affectionate. You were up late again. You really should take a break once in a while. He folded the paper neatly. Breaks make people soft. She smiled. You've always said that. She poured the coffee, placed the cup before him, and kissed his cheek. The faint trace of perfume, the same scent she'd worn in Blake Russo's condo, brushed against him like a taunt. Reed didn't flinch. He'd trained his body long ago to show no reaction under fire. Anything special on the agenda today? She asked. He sipped his coffee. Just business. Numbers, meetings, and more numbers. Ugh. Sounds thrilling, she teased. You should let me help with some of it. I've been looking into new investment portfolios. We could grow the charity fund if you just... Reed looked at her, expression unreadable. Charity fund, he repeated. Yes. She smiled brightly. The one Blake helped me set up. Remember? You said I should learn more about handling accounts. Reed held her gaze for a long moment. And you've been learning quickly. She laughed, not catching the weight in his tone. You make it sound suspicious. Don't worry, I only move what's safe. I wouldn't want you to think I have trust issues. Trust issues. The irony nearly made him smile. Of course not, he said smoothly, finishing his coffee. You're the most trustworthy woman I know. Her eyes softened. That's sweet, Reed. He stood, placed the cup in the sink, and straightened his tie. Dinner at 8? I'll be here. Good. he said, and left without looking back. By the time his car reached the Crosswell security headquarters, the calm mask had settled back over him. Employees greeted him in the lobby. "Good morning, Mr. Crosswell," and he responded with a faint nod, efficient and controlled. But inside, his mind was a loaded chamber. Upstairs, Damon Willis waited in his office, a man built like a bear with years of field muscle hidden beneath a suit that didn't quite fit. The blinds were drawn, the screens on the wall filled with encrypted data streams. "You look like hell," Damon said. Reed closed the door behind him. "Show me what you found." Damon tapped a key. A list appeared. Bank accounts, Cayman Trust Holdings. "She's been siphoning money for 3 months," Damon said. "Started small, 10 grand here, 20 there, but lately it's gone into the millions, $4.6 million total. All offshore. She's using an intermediary fund registered under her maiden name, Vivian Klein." Reed's jaw tightened. "And Blake?" "He's the funnel," Damon said. "All her transfers pass through his firm first, disguised as legal consulting fees. He's protecting her under attorney, client privilege." Reed stared at the screen. "That's smart. Illegal, but smart." "Oh, it gets better," Damon said grimly. He opened another file. "I traced her messages. Blake's got a contact inside the civil court. Judge Alan Wilson. Ring a bell?" Reed nodded slowly. "He handled that weapons contract arbitration last year." "Right. Blake made campaign donations to his re-election fund. Wilson's son just got a 6-figure job at a firm Blake co-owns quietly." Reed turned from the screen, the cold precision in his expression sharpening. "They're bribing the judge." Damon nodded. "Looks that way. Wilson's already assigned to your divorce case, which hasn't even been filed yet." Reed stopped moving. "What did you say?" "Vivian's been meeting with a divorce consultant. Papers are ready, just waiting on timing." Damon hesitated. "Blake's the representing attorney." Reed said nothing for a long moment. The room hummed with the faint static of encrypted feeds. Finally, he walked to the window, looking out over the skyline. "She's planning to divorce me, take half, and cripple the company. With the judge on payroll, she gets everything." "Exactly. Your company valuation puts half around $68 million. Reed's reflection in the glass was calm, composed, but his eyes were no longer human warmth. They were surgical steel. Damon exhaled. "What do you want me to do? We can shut it down right now. File charges, expose the accounts." No, the single word cut like a knife. Damon frowned. "No." Reed turned, his tone measured. "If we act now, they'll destroy evidence. They'll cry misunderstanding, blame Blake, play the victim. I want them comfortable. I want them confident. You're going to let them keep running?" "For now," Reed said. "People reveal their true networks when they think they've already won." Damon studied him. "You've gone cold again. That's not a good sign." Reed ignored the comment, pacing slowly. "Tell me everything. Dates, transfers, connections. I want a full web. Blake, Vivian, Wilson, anyone tied to them. I'll build this quietly." Damon nodded reluctantly. "You're planning something." Reed poured 2 glasses of scotch from a cabinet, handed one to his old friend. "I'm planning survival," he said. "And justice." Damon raised an eyebrow. "Justice, huh? Sounds a lot like revenge." Reed clinked his glass against Damon's. "Call it whatever makes you sleep at night." They drank in silence. Then Damon said, "You sure you can pull this off without losing it? She's not just some enemy, Reed. That's your wife." Reed's gaze hardened. "No, Damon. That was my wife. What she is now, I'll deal with accordingly." That evening, Reed returned home. The mansion glowed warmly, the illusion of peace restored. Vivian was in the living room, a glass of wine in her hand, a smile perfectly rehearsed. "You're home late," she said. "Work ran long. I ordered dinner. Thought we could spend some time together." He looked at her, the woman who had shared his bed, his secrets, his empire, and saw a stranger wrapped in the same skin. "Sounds perfect," he said. They ate quietly. She talked about travel, investments, new opportunities. Her hands moved gracefully, the diamond on her finger catching candlelight. Reed nodded at the right times, responded softly, laughed once. When she mentioned Blake's name, "Blake thinks we should diversify the foundation assets." He only said, "Blake always has good ideas." After dinner, she touched his arm. "You've seemed distant lately." "I miss you, Reed." He met her gaze. Then, don't. Her brow furrowed. Don't what? Don't miss me. I'm right here. She smiled uncertainly. Good, because I don't want us to drift apart. He smiled too, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. We won't. I promise. Later, when she was asleep, Reed returned to his office. He opened Damon's latest file, new logs, new proof, every lie quantified in numbers and dates. Offshore transactions, judicial favors, private messages. His hand hovered over the mouse. One click could expose everything. And all tonight. But instead, he leaned back in his chair, a slow, deliberate breath escaping his chest. No, he murmured. Confrontation ends it too soon. The city lights reflected in his eyes like a map of war zones. He whispered the words that would define everything that followed. I won't confront them. I'll dismantle them. Chapter 3. The Mask of Collapse. Reed Crosswell had never been an actor. He'd been a soldier, a negotiator, a CEO who enforced outcomes. Yet now he found himself thrumming with a different kind of discipline, the cold, methodical composition of a man who would feign ruin to unmask ruiners. He told himself the performance was a weapon, and weapons required rehearsal. The first week of his act was surgical. He missed the quarterly breakfast with the board, a note left on his leather chair saying his head was elsewhere. He postponed investor calls with a clipped email. Personal matters require my attention. My apologies. He let 2 small contracts slide through red tape, then a medium-sized one. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to make his absence a headline in the trade blogs. Crosswell slows down. Founder under strain? The article smelled faintly of schadenfreude. Reed took a picture of the headlines, then crumpled it and put it in a drawer as if folding up a map he no longer needed. At home, he staged late nights that felt real to everyone who watched at a distance. He left the study light burning and returned with whiskey breath, a shirt wrinkled, a tie askew. He stumbled once, theatrically, across the marble foyer, letting Vivian's hands land on his arm. Are you okay? She would ask, with the amused concern of someone who senses advantage. He let her help steady him, let her think she was rescuing the man she had already betrayed. You should go to sleep earlier, she told him one night after one of his performances. Her voice was soft, practiced like a lullaby. You look exhausted. Business keeps me awake, he slurred, voice heavy in the dim. He clung to the line between believable and obscene. Too much and suspicion would pierce through. Too little and the show would collapse. He calibrated each breath like a marksman adjusting for wind. At the office, employees whispered in stairwells. Megan from procurement caught him in the elevator, eyes wide with gossip. Mr. Crosswell, are you fine? He said, and smiled with a slack sympathy that read like charity. He let the rumor mill spin. It was a useful thing to watch, watching people fill silence with stories. He let a photograph leak, an out-of-focus shot of him with a glass in hand at a bar, and watched the journalists sharpen their teeth. Vivian thrived in the new light. She floated through social events like a queen with freshly minted crown jewels. At a donor gala, she stood under a chandelier, laughing at some legal joke Blake's firm partner told, wrist brushing his, eyes bright with triumph. Blake lingered at her elbow like an admiring shadow, whispering assurances that sounded like strategy and love mixed. Everything's going according to plan, Blake murmured one evening in the hushed hospitality room of a political fundraiser. He spoke the words like liturgy. Vivian's smile widened. We timed it perfectly, she replied, fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass. Once the judge signs, Reed won't know what hit him. They didn't know, of course, that someone else was watching every confident flutter of their eyelashes. Damon moved like a ghost through the arteries of Reed's life. He installed layers that were both overt and invisible. He began with the physical, a tiny bead of a camera behind a framed photograph in Reed's study, a directional mic in the candelabra of the dining room. A GPS wisp slipped into the lining of Vivian's favorite purse during a casual exchange at a charity event. He logged patterns. Tuesday nights at Blake's condo, late lunches in the Midtown bistro, transfers that appeared like phantoms and disappeared into offshore shadows. She's meticulous, Trinity, an ex-EIA operative Reed had begun to court quietly, said into Reed's ear during a late meeting in a parking garage. But her meticulousness is predictable. People keep the same comfort rhythms even when they're lying. Damon worked digital angles as well. He had already splayed open the financial veins, offshore accounts, roundabout transfers, and coded memos. He placed silent intercepts in Blake's email servers, slipped in a mirror server to log backups, and rerouted copies of encrypted messages to a black box repository only he, Reed, and Loretta could access. He planted a few tidy breadcrumb trails, fake leads, and decoy files that Blake would likely touch, just to see who else in the firm would move. Reed kept his face blank through all of it. At a shareholders' luncheon, he returned from a doctor's appointment with red-rimmed eyes and an apologetic laugh. The cameras caught him. The headlines multiplied. At night, though, when the house settled and Vivian's voice stopped filling rooms, Reed's performance dropped away like a stage set. He peeled the masks he'd worn and walked the corridors with Damon and Trinity in tow, listening to the streams of data bleed into meaning. "Listen," Damon would say, pausing a recording until a whisper rose like a fossilized bone. "There, did you hear it?" Sometimes Reed wanted to scream, to confront the two people who had made a theater of his life. He imagined slamming a fist into Blake's lawyerly jaw and telling Vivian the history he would have carved like a warning into her memory. But confrontation was quick and cheap. It would not yield the map he needed. It would not reveal the judge's reach or the charity's laundering channels. It would not bring the men who'd taken contracts and foreign buyers into light. It would only stir the hornet's nest. So he played the fallen man. Word did its work. The industry blogs speculated on his capacity. The tabloids sneered. At a small fundraiser for Crosswell Securities' charitable arm, a woman sniffed when she saw him and said, loud enough for a server to hear, "He looks lost, doesn't he?" Such a shame. The server glanced at Reed and instinctively checked his phone. 1,000 thumbs scrolled through the narrative Reed had allowed. In private, there were no slips in the act. Reed attended a terse lunch with a senior vice president, and, while his hands trembled for effect, his eyes read the balance sheets like poetry. He authorized contingency funds that masked where money really might be needed. He made small concessions that ensured larger traps. A delayed payment here, an approval there. Every misstep was intentional. Every stumble a carefully placed stone on a path that would lead his enemies right where he wanted them. Blake, confident and sleek, continued to reassure Vivian. "Let him drink the lie," he said once, perched on the edge of a bar stool with the loose arrogance of a man used to other people's fear. "When he thinks he's down, he'll show his hand. Men like him, pride kills them. He'll prove it. What if he doesn't?" Vivian asked silently, but she hadn't yet learned the weight of a man who'd been trained to survive by seeming to surrender. Blake laughed softly. "He will. They all do." Damon watched the couple's rise in confidence from a bank of monitors and felt a grim satisfaction. He forwarded Reed a thread that showed a string of late-night texts between Blake and a judge's clerk, promises dressed as reminders, mentions of favors and paperwork. Trinity worked to intercept calls, placing soft taps that triangulated presence without alarming the prey. "You know what they don't expect?" Trinity asked Reed once, leaning against the car in the lot as the rain began to fall. "They think exposure comes from the outside. They forget that most predators get caught by the ones they take for granted." Reed laughed once, a sound that was more emotion than he had let show in weeks. He kissed Trinity's forehead in a gesture that felt like gratitude and strategy blended. They waited as the public spectacle swelled. They watched the whispers grow into articles, the articles into editorials. Vivian walked through the world believing she had the map and the compass. The trap, invisible and patient, tightened. The prey thinks it's hunting, but the hunter is already inside their den. Chapter 4. The Allies Assemble. The night Reed Crosswell decided to stop playing defense, the city outside his penthouse was soaked in rain. Neon reflections bled across the glass like veins of red and gold, flickering each time thunder cracked. He sat at the long oak table in his study, a tumbler of untouched whiskey before him, and stared at the names scrawled across a notepad, names that could either save him or destroy him. Trinity Moore, Mallory Kent, Loretta Torres. 3 women, 3 weapons. Each had crossed paths with him once before, and each, in their own way, owed him a debt, the kind that wasn't paid with money. Reed reached for his phone, thumb hovering for a beat before he tapped the first encrypted contact. Trinity Moore, the ghost in the system, she answered on the second ring. Her voice sharp, controlled. If this is about Crosswell Security's contract with the State Department, I told you, it's not business, Reed interrupted quietly. It's personal. That word, personal, hung like a switchblade between them. There was a pause, then a soft exhale. How deep are you in it, Reed? Deep enough that I can't use my own team, he said. I need someone who can see without being seen. I remember you saving my clearance when Langley tried to burn me, she said. Guess it's time I pay the favor. Reed leaned back, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. Meet me tomorrow. Midnight. The safe house on Wilburn Avenue. You still keep that place? Some things are worth keeping, he said. When the line went dead, he allowed himself a small, grim smile. The first piece was in motion. Mallory Kent, the hammer and heels. The next call was trickier. Mallory Kent was a name that made defense attorneys flinch. She'd built her career exposing financial predators, and once, long ago, she'd almost dismantled Blake Russo's firm before politics got in her way. When Reed called, she was in her office, still working at 10:47 p.m. Reed Crosswell, she said, suspicion lacing her tone. You finally decide to hire a real prosecutor instead of a PR firm? Something like that, he replied, keeping his voice low. Blake Russo ring a bell. Her pen stopped scratching against paper. That snake? Yeah. What did he do this time? He's screwing my wife and planning to rob me blind. Silence. Then, a faint chuckle, not cruel, but sharp, amused in a way only someone who loved justice could be. That's poetic. He always thought he was untouchable. You want me to prosecute? Not yet. I need quiet cooperation. I'll give you everything you need, transfers, shell accounts, offshore routes. But I need your reach. Your people in the financial crimes division. The ones who still owe you calls. I'll see what strings I can pull, she said. And Reed, yes. Don't expect sympathy. I'm not here for your marriage. I'm here because I like taking down arrogant bastards who think they can by the system. That's all I need, he said. When she hung up, Reed's reflection in the glass looked almost like a stranger's, colder, steadier, purpose rebuilding him cell by cell. Loretta Torres. The quiet blade, the third name, was the most unexpected. Loretta Torres, a small, soft-spoken lawyer who had left the DOJ years ago to teach law part-time. She didn't look like much of a threat, which made her perfect. Reed met her in person, at a modest cafe, tucked between a bookstore and flower shop. She wore a navy suit and carried a worn briefcase. When she saw him, her eyes flicked with curiosity, not fear. Mr. Crosswell, she said, offering her hand. You mentioned needing private counsel. You understand, I don't handle high-profile divorces. That's exactly why I need you, Reed said. You'll be my official legal representative, appearances only. Behind the scenes, you'll coordinate with 2 other operatives. Her brow arched. That sounds dangerously close to entrapment. It's not entrapment if I'm protecting myself from fraud, he countered, leaning in. I have proof my wife and her lawyer are orchestrating a financial takeover, one involving bribery, money laundering, and judicial manipulation. Loretta's lips pursed. Judge Wilson. Reed blinked. You know him. I've prosecuted 2 cases where his name came up in sealed testimony. Never officially tied, but the rumors aren't clean. Reed nodded slowly. Then you understand why I need you. She exhaled, eyes narrowing with calculation. I assume I'll need to work quietly, fake filings, misdirections? Yes. You'll file decoy motions. Things that look like legal blunders but are actually traps. If Blake bites, we'll have him documented. Loretta sat back, studying him for a long moment. You're not just protecting assets, Mr. Crosswell. You're going to war. Reed didn't smile. No, I'm ending one. The network forms. By the end of the week, all 4 of them, Reed, Damon, Trinity, Mallory, and Loretta, gathered in the safe house. It was a stripped-down 2-story building that smelled faintly of dust and coffee. The rain outside was relentless, and thunder punctuated every tense breath. Trinity arrived first, dressed in black jeans and a bomber jacket, setting down a hard case filled with miniature devices. "Your wife's lover's office. You want full access?" "I want to hear him breathe if he lies," Reed said. She smirked. "Then I'll plant mics in the HVAC system. No one checks there anymore." Mallory entered next, heels clicking against the wooden floor. She tossed a stack of documents onto the table. Offshore routing numbers. Cayman, Belize, Singapore. Blake's firm's fingerprints are all over them. Damon, seated at the end, scrolled through encrypted files. "That matches what I found on the mirror server. They're using layered trusts through a shell called Hollister International. It's tied to an account in Vivian's name." Loretta listened quietly, pen tapping against her notebook. "We'll need to let them think they're still ahead. If Blake suspects even a whisper of resistance, he'll lawyer up harder than a mob boss." Reed looked around the table, four faces reflecting lightning through the window. "So we move quietly. Damon, you handle the intel lines. Trinity, surveillance. Mallory, start feeding financial data to your contacts, but off the record. Loretta, prepare filings that look sloppy enough to draw Blake's ego out." Trinity leaned forward, grinning. "We're setting the chessboard, then?" Reed nodded. "Exactly. And I'll be the piece they think is already broken." Operation begins. 3 nights later, Trinity's infiltration began. Dressed as a cleaning contractor, she entered Blake Russo's office building at 2:13 a.m. Her ID badge, a perfect forgery courtesy of Damon, beeped green at the door. Inside, the firm was silent except for the hum of air conditioning. She moved like liquid, placing micro cameras behind art frames and microphones inside recessed light fixtures. Her voice whispered through the comms. "Office bugged. Computer cloned. Safe scanned. Empty, probably offshore data." Reed listened from the safe house, arms crossed, every word vibrating through him. When Trinity exited, her voice was calm. "He won't even know he's naked." Mallory's turn came next. She met with an old contact at the state attorney's office, a weary investigator named Jensen. "Off the record," she told him, sliding a folder across the table. "I need eyes on these transfers. Don't flag them yet, just trace them quietly." He scanned the numbers. "That's Russo's firm. You're going after him again." "Not officially," she said with a half smile. "But let's just say I'm building a picture." Jensen sighed. "If this blows up, it won't." Mallory cut in. "Not yet." Loretta played her role last. At Reed's instruction, she filed a set of intentionally flawed financial disclosures under Crosswell Securities Trust. Within hours, Blake's paralegal emailed Vivian. He made a mistake. This could speed up asset division. Loretta smiled when she saw the intercepted message. He took the bait. Reed watched the data stream flow in from all sides: audio, financial logs, legal replies, and felt the old soldier in him wake. Every move was now being logged, mapped, and stored. The game board was alive. The enemy didn't even know they were surrounded. Every conversation, every transfer, every whisper was being captured. They just didn't know it yet. Chapter 5. The Web Titans. Rain fell in steady sheets over the city, drumming against the Crosswell estate's floor-to-ceiling windows like a warning Reed had been expecting but never needed. Inside, he sat in the study, hands clasped behind his head, eyes fixed on the dark skyline. The illusion of calm hit a mind in constant motion. Every second of Vivian and Blake's arrogance was now a thread Reed intended to pull. Trinity's voice came through the encrypted earpiece, calm but sharp. Location: Blake's condo, 11:42 p.m. He's alone. Wait, she's here. Conversation starting. Reed leaned forward. The monitors in front of him displayed Trinity's feed, subtle camera angles hidden in ceiling panels, and air vents captured everything. Vivian's laughter floated clearly, too casual for someone speaking about millions of dollars. "I don't want him to get suspicious," she said, her tone playful but commanding. "Wilson's cut has to be clean. The judge has to be convinced the charity distributions are legitimate." Blake, lounging in a leather chair with a half-smoked cigar, exhaled smoke that drifted lazily toward the ceiling. "Relax. I've handled Wilson before. He knows which side his bread is buttered on." The charity fund's perfect, a few fake donations, a few phantom accounts. No one checks those numbers anyway. Vivian's fingers tapped rhythmically on the marble table. I just want this done right. I want it airtight. Offshore accounts, foundation, the judge's gift, everything lined up. No mistakes. Trust me, Blake said with a smug grin. Mistakes are the last thing we'll make. Trinity's mic picked up every syllable, every chuckle, every subtle inflection. Sir, Trinity whispered into Reed's earpiece. They're discussing specific account numbers. I'm logging everything. They're sloppy. Reed's jaw tightened. Good. Keep it all. Every number, every date, every dollar. Don't miss a beat. Meanwhile, Damon was in the other room, sleeves rolled up, eyes glued to code cascading down multiple monitors. He had traced the account layers back through 3 shell corporations and 2 overseas banks. Each transfer led to another, each layer more intricate than the last. Reed, Damon said, voice low, this goes deeper than I thought. They're not just laundering charity money. They've been selling access to your classified contracts overseas. Private clients, security firms in hostile countries. This is treason level. They've been using Vivian's foundation as cover. Reed closed his eyes briefly, breathing in slowly. The anger that had been simmering for weeks sharpened into crystalline purpose. Betrayal was no longer a personal wound. It was a weapon to be wielded. What about Wilson? Reed asked. He's compromised, Damon said. Bribery, under-the-table favors, campaign donations. He's already indicated he's willing to rule in their favor once the filings go through. Reed rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of every sleepless night, every private insult hidden behind smiles. And yet, he did not shout. He did not move hastily. The man who had been betrayed had already become the tactician. Later, Trinity whispered again from the field. They're laughing now, she said. Blake just told her about the offshore diversion to cover a minor discrepancy. She's thrilled. She believes she's untouchable. Reed's voice was a whisper in return. Perfect. Let them think they're safe. Every move they make now is going on the record. He turned to Loretta, who was quietly scribbling notes and marking potential legal loopholes. Make sure the filings for these minor discrepancies look real. If they pull any strings, we'll have proof of manipulation. Blake won't suspect a thing. Loretta's lips pursed. I can create the perfect bait. Every error will look genuine, but trap them if they try to act too soon. And Mallory? Reed asked. Contacts are in motion, Mallory replied, sitting across the table with her laptop open. Federal oversight, quietly reviewing international transfers. Nothing will leak, but every flag movement will be noted. If they try to pull anything crazy, we'll have immediate evidence. Reed nodded, the pieces falling into a grid inside his mind. Every whisper, every dollar, every document was now a thread woven into a net. Back at Blake's condo, the confidence between Vivian and Blake had grown into carelessness. Do you think he suspects? Vivian asked, swirling the wine in her glass. Blake laughed, leaning back in his chair. Reed? No way. He's too noble. He'd rather drown in self-pity than accuse us outright. Besides, look at him. He's weak. Always has been. Vivian smiled faintly, but a small tremor in her voice betrayed tension she hadn't acknowledged even to herself. What about the contracts overseas? She asked. Relax, Blake said. The transfers are covered. None of it touches your accounts directly. And if Reed even notices, we'll say it's just charity mismanagement. No one questions that. Especially not him. Unbeknownst to them, every word was being archived by Trinity, every gesture recorded, every smirk cataloged as evidence. Damon paused at a file, watching a pattern emerge. See that? He said. Every major transfer coincides with a board meeting or public announcement. They're sloppy because they think timing covers mistakes. Reed leaned over the screen, eyes narrowing. It's not sloppiness. It's hubris. The higher they fly, the harder they fall. He traced a finger along the data stream, mapping out offshore accounts, shell companies, and the connections to Vivian's foundation. The lines twisted across continents, Singapore, Panama, the Caymans, all feeding into the same shadowed channels. "This is bigger than I thought," he muttered. "They're selling access to security contracts. Sensitive, classified contracts. Clients in hostile nations." Damon's face was grim. "Federal-level stuff, Reed. If anyone discovers this, it's treason." Reed leaned back in his chair, the faint sound of thunder punctuating his thoughts. His pain, the betrayal, the deceit, the laughter of the two people he had trusted most, coalesced into cold clarity. Every insult, every stolen dollar, every whispered plan now became fuel. He said quietly, almost to himself, "Then we'll make them pay on every level they can't even imagine." That night, Reed walked the perimeter of his penthouse balcony. The city spread beneath him, dark and endless. In the distance, car lights snaked through streets like rivers of molten gold. He imagined Vivian and Blake at that very moment, confident and unaware that their empire of lies was already being cataloged, mapped, and dissected by a team who never slept. In the safe house, Trinity uploaded her recordings to encrypted servers. Damon traced more financial trails. Loretta drafted motions that looked like missteps but were calculated, and Mallory confirmed federal oversight, quietly monitoring the pattern. "Everything they do is being watched," Reed whispered. "And soon, everything they think is hidden will be visible." His hands clenched the railing. The man who had felt the sting of betrayal, the shattering of trust, now moved in silence, deliberate, patient, and unstoppable. Pain had transformed into purpose. The wounded husband was gone. In his place stood a silent tactician, orchestrating the downfall of those who had dared to destroy him. Chapter 6. The Calm Before the Court. The morning sun barely reached the Crosswell Security Building when Reed Crosswell stepped into the sleek black sedan waiting at the curb. His shoulders slumped just enough, his tie slightly crooked, his eyes hollowed to match the whispers he knew would follow him today. To the public, he was the fallen titan, a man unraveling under personal and professional strain. Vivian, by contrast, radiated triumph. Her champagne-colored dress clung perfectly to her frame, her heels clicking confidently against the marble floor as she prepared to walk into court on Blake Russo's arm. Her lipstick was a declaration, her hair impeccably styled, every detail an assertion that she had already won. Reed's driver glanced at him briefly through the rearview mirror. "You okay, sir?" Reed forced a slow nod, eyes down. "Fine." The sedan pulled into the courthouse plaza, reporters already snapping pictures, microphones extended. A string of murmurs followed Vivian as she stepped out. "She looks unshakable. Did you see her smile? Half of Crosswell security could be hers today." Reed walked behind, shoulders slightly hunched, sipping from a paper cup of coffee. His gaze flicked up at a flashbulb, then down again. To anyone watching, he seemed defeated, exhausted, distraught. Inside the courtroom, the air was tense, scented faintly of polished wood and nervous anticipation. Reed's team, Trinity, Damon, Mallory, and Loretta, waited in the gallery, quietly assembling their final pieces. Trinity's camera discreetly tracked Vivian and Blake as they took their seats, while Damon's encrypted feeds captured every movement and whispered conversation. Loretta arranged documents on the desk, ensuring every mistake looked convincing to the court. Mallory monitored communications outside, her contacts ready for any federal intervention if needed. Judge Wilson's gavel pounded the bench. "We are here to begin the matter of Reed Crosswell versus Vivian Klein Crosswell." His tone was casual, bordering on condescending. Vivian stood, a model of composure. Blake whispered into her ear, his confidence palpable. "Relax. We've done everything right." Reed slouched slightly in his chair, hands loosely folded. His hair was unkempt by design, a shadowed beard giving him a haunted appearance. To the courtroom and the world, he seemed like a man already broken. The bailiff called the first witnesses. Reed's counsel began speaking, attempting to outline the facts, but Judge Wilson interrupted swiftly. "Mr. Crosswell, perhaps we can dispense with unnecessary details. We all know this is about asset division. Let's focus." Blake's lips twitched in satisfaction. He leaned over to whisper to Vivian. "See? He's already at a disadvantage. The judge is cooperative. Vivian's hand brushed lightly against Blake's, a signal of quiet victory. "Patience," she whispered. "Everything is going as planned." Reed remained silent, appearing to absorb the judge's biased interruptions. Every time the counsel tried to present financial evidence or question transfers, Wilson cut them off, allowing Vivian to speak freely and at length. The bias was blatant. Yet Reed's eyes, when not on the judge, flicked toward Trinity's subtle nods from the gallery. She was tracking every whispered confession, every casual boast between Vivian and Blake. Damon's encrypted streams ensured that nothing, no document, no whispered plan, would escape their observation. During a brief recess, Vivian walked past reporters with Blake at her side. "Strong stance," one journalist murmured. Another added, "She looks ready to take everything." Vivian smiled, eyes glinting with triumph. "That's the plan," she said softly. Reed walked past the same reporters 5 minutes later, hooded eyes and slumped shoulders. Cameras captured every detail. His disheveled hair, the faint tremor in his hands, the hollow gaze. Public perception painted him as a man teetering on collapse. Perfect. Back in the courtroom, proceedings resumed. Witnesses testified about trivial details, the judge cutting them off repeatedly if they strayed toward facts unfavorable to Vivian. Blake presented documents with a flourish, emphasizing numbers and transfers that painted Reed as disorganized and inattentive. "Your Honor," Loretta whispered from Reed's side, "they're confident. Every gesture they make confirms our assumptions. They don't suspect a thing." Reed's hand brushed against her knee. "Good," he murmured. "Let them think they're untouchable." Outside the courtroom, Trinity adjusted her microphone hidden under a potted plant. She whispered into the comm. "He's slouching, drinking water nervously, but every word from them is being captured. They're careless, Reed. This is your moment to see what they don't know we have." Damon's voice crackled softly in the same earpiece. "All offshore accounts, every transfer, every conversation is being logged in real time. Wilson is playing his role perfectly, thinking he's shielding them. But every word is going straight to Exhibit Z." Reed's eyes remained fixed on Vivian and Blake, though the hollow mask remained in place. He let her arrogance settle into the room like smoke, filling every corner, unaware that it would become their undoing. Blake whispered something under his breath, laughing softly. "Judge Wilson's favor, the charity cover, the accounts, everything is in place. He won't see it coming." Vivian's smile widened. "I know. I feel unstoppable." Reed didn't react, but in the shadows of the courtroom, a different tension built. His jaw tightened imperceptibly. Every flick of their hands, every casual statement about transfers or the judge's cut, was being cataloged, annotated, and encrypted. Mallory leaned forward from the gallery, whispering, "We've got enough evidence to start a chain reaction if we need federal intervention. Every move they make confirms the patterns we predicted." "Good," Reed said under his breath. "They're tightening their web, and we're already outside it, watching them fall into the trap we set months ago." Judge Wilson drummed his gavel impatiently. "Mr. Crosswell, are you ready to proceed?" Reed lifted his head slowly, eyes meeting the judge's. For the world, it was a glance of uncertainty, maybe a plea. For his team, it was calm, deliberate observation. Every nuance mattered, every pause, every stutter, every forced gesture. Trinity's camera captured it all. The faint tremor in Blake's hand as he passed papers to Vivian, the whisper about the offshore accounts, the casual laughter about the charity foundation. Damon's monitors confirmed. Every financial trail, every conversation, every illicit suggestion about overseas security contracts was already secured. Reed leaned back slightly, maintaining the mask of defeat, but in his mind, the final piece was set. Exhibit Z, a single audio file, innocuous in appearance, but lethal in content. The damning proof of bribery, fraud, and conspiracy, linking Blake, Vivian, and Judge Wilson directly to every illicit act. Everything lined up perfectly. No one in the courtroom suspected its existence. Not Vivian, not Blake, not even Wilson. Reed's lips pressed into a thin line, the calm before the storm settling around him like a cloak. Everything was ready. Everything was in place. And the world still thought he was broken. Chapter 7. The Verdict. The courthouse was heavy with anticipation. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, casting a halo over polished wood and leather seats. Reed Crosswell sat in his chair with his usual slouched posture, eyes seemingly distant, hands loosely folded in front of him. To anyone watching, he looked defeated, hollowed by betrayal, exhausted by life's blows. Yet beneath that mask, his mind was an intricate machine, calculating every angle, every word, every movement that would unfold in the next few minutes. Vivian entered the courtroom first, a vision of self-assured power. She moved on Blake Russo's arm, her heels clicking with an audible rhythm that seemed to echo through the chamber. Reporters whispered among themselves, capturing photos, noting every detail. The confident tilt of her head, the gleam in her eyes, the perfect curve of her smile. All marital assets to the wife. Reed heard the words before they were even fully spoken, a chill sliding down his spine like ice water. Judge Wilson's voice rang through the room, cold and precise. All marital assets to the wife. Vivian's lips curved into a triumphant smile. She leaned over, planting a quick, deliberate kiss on Blake's cheek. The courtroom seemed to inhale with the weight of her victory. Cameras clicked, reporters murmured, and the collective energy in the room shifted as though the world itself acknowledged the end of Reed Crosswell's empire. Blake whispered in Vivian's ear, voice smooth and cocky. "See? I told you. Every detail covered. Wilson's on our side." Vivian's laughter was light, triumphant. "I almost feel sorry for him," she said, glancing toward Reed. "Almost." The murmurs of the spectators swelled. The attorneys, the press, even some of Reed's former allies looked on with expectation. All assumed that the game was over. Reed's body remained slouched. His eyes darkened. A soft shadow underlined his jaw. To the world, he was a man crushed under the weight of betrayal. Then he moved. Slowly, deliberately, he rose from his chair with a precision that belied his apparent weakness. The courtroom seemed to pause, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in energy that registered only to those watching closely. His movements were smooth, calm, and deliberate. The hollow mask faded just enough to reveal a faint glint in his eyes. The cold, unreadable spark of a man who had not surrendered, but had been waiting. "Your Honor," Reed's voice broke through the murmurs. Calm, controlled, unflinching. "May I present Exhibit Z?" A ripple of confusion spread across the courtroom. Whispers fluttered like anxious birds. Reporters' pens froze mid-scribble. Even Vivian's confident smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a blink unnoticed by most, but caught by Damon's hidden cameras and Trinity surveillance feed. Judge Wilson leaned forward, eyebrows knitting. "Exhibit Z?" he asked, tone skeptical, curiosity flickering beneath the habitual condescension. "You can explain, Mr. Crosswell." Reed's eyes swept the courtroom, landing on Loretta Torres with the faintest of nods. The clerk at the front, a man used to routine and unremarkable filings, hesitated but followed the cue. Loretta gestured subtly, confirming the file had been preloaded, encrypted, and ready for the moment. The audio began, clear, unflinching, undeniable. Vivian's voice floated first, light and careless. "Once Wilson has his cut, the judge will look the other way. No one will notice the diversion through the foundation. The overseas transfers are clean." Blake's voice followed, smug and assured. "I've handled it before. Every account layered. Every movement traceable only to shell companies. Your contribution is perfect. He'll never suspect a thing until it's too late." Vivian laughed softly, a sound that had haunted Reed's nights for weeks. "We should be able to walk away with everything, the contracts, the money, even his company. And if anyone asks, it's all charity." Blake chuckled. "Exactly. And Wilson? He's already signed off in his mind. He'll give me whatever I need. It's foolproof." The courtroom froze. Reporters stopped typing. Cameras lowered slightly, and even the bailiff's hand hovered near the gavel as if sensing the gravity of the moment. Gasps echoed, faint at first, then growing louder, filling every corner of the chamber with disbelief. Judge Wilson's hands trembled imperceptibly on the bench. His face, once confident, drained of color. The gavel quivered as though caught in midair, waiting for a moment to strike, but unsure what judgment to deliver now. Reed folded his arms calmly, standing upright, a picture of composed menace. He didn't speak again. He didn't need to. The audio was sufficient. Every illicit transfer, every whispered plan, every bribe was now immortalized, undeniable, and damning. Vivian's confident posture wavered. She opened her mouth, likely to protest, to claim manipulation, to summon some final legal maneuver, but the sound of her own voice, played through the speakers, betrayed her arrogance. Her fingers trembled slightly as she gripped Blake's arm. Blake's smug grin faltered. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his normally polished facade cracking under the weight of evidence that he hadn't anticipated, evidence that Reed had been cultivating for months. Reed's team watched in silence from the gallery. Trinity's fingers hovered over her console, ready to adjust camera angles, to capture every reaction. Damon's eyes scanned the encrypted financial logs, confirming the digital signatures matched every word heard. Mallory's lips pressed into a thin line as she noted the precise sequence of incriminating statements. Loretta, sitting nearest Reed, adjusted a file on her lap, letting the audio continue, perfectly timed, no words lost to chance. The room was taut with tension. Every whisper of paper, every cough from the gallery seemed amplified. Reed's mask of calm was absolute. He did not flinch when Vivian's eyes met his, wide with shock, disbelief, and fear. He did not react to Blake's trembling jaw or the subtle twitch in Wilson's hands. He simply waited, silent and unyielding, arms folded, as the storm he had orchestrated finally broke around them. Every reporter, every spectator, every legal professional in the courtroom was forced to confront a simple truth. The apparent victor, the woman who had claimed triumph with a kiss, the lawyer who had smirked with confidence, and the judge who had feigned impartiality, had been caught completely off guard. Their carefully constructed world was collapsing, recorded in real time, and broadcast to anyone who dared to witness. Reed stood as the perfect portrait of control amid chaos. His posture straightened, his eyes cold, calculating. He did not need to raise his voice. He did not need to plead. His team had done what he alone could not have accomplished in a single confrontation. He had turned the predators into prey, the arrogant into exposed, the untouchable into vulnerable. The audio continued, every word a nail, every confession a hammer, striking the foundation of their deception. And in that moment, Reed Crosswell became something entirely new. Not the betrayed husband, not the man feigning defeat, but the silent tactician whose patience and strategy had rendered his enemies powerless. The courtroom, frozen in shock and disbelief, could only witness. The gavel wavered. Reporters' cameras clicked endlessly, capturing faces of astonishment and horror. Reed did not move. He did not speak. He only watched, calm, composed, absolute. Chapter 8. The storm breaks. The courtroom had settled into tense anticipation. The silence after Reed Crosswell's presentation of Exhibit Z almost deafening. Reporters sat frozen, pens poised, cameras still, every eye on the unfolding drama. Reed's posture was immaculate, arms folded, his expression unreadable. Vivian and Blake were still recovering from the shock, their confidence shattered in a matter of seconds. Then Blake moved. "Objection! What did you get that?" he barked, his voice slicing through the courtroom like a whip. His face was pale, sweat forming at his temples. This audio. This is inadmissible. You can't, Mr. Russo." Judge Wilson bellowed, banging his gavel. "Order in the court. Sit down, or I will hold you in contempt." Blake's hand trembled as he waved at the clerk. "This isn't legal. This." Before he could finish, the double doors at the back of the courtroom burst open with a sudden force. Federal agents in dark suits and tactical vests poured into the room. weapons holstered but ready, badges flashing. The room erupted into chaos. Cameras swung toward the new arrivals, reporters shouting questions, phones capturing every moment. Reed, as always, remained calm. His hands relaxed at his sides, his face an unwavering mask of control. He looked at Judge Wilson, who was mid-gavel strike, and spoke evenly, measured, with authority that silenced even the murmurs in the courtroom. "That's the FBI, Your Honor. They've had the evidence for weeks." The judge froze, his gavel hovering midair. His eyes widened, and his normally smug composure crumbled. A faint tremor passed through his hands as two agents approached him, handing over thick folders, stamped warrant, and federal order. Vivian screamed, a piercing, high-pitched sound that echoed through the chamber. What are you doing?" she shrieked, spinning toward Blake for support. But he was already frozen, staring at the agents who now surrounded the bench, documenting every move, every document, every face. "Get away from me," Blake yelled, trying to step back toward the exit. Agents quickly moved to block him, placing hands firmly on his shoulders, steering him toward the cuffs. He thrashed, his suit jacket crumpling as he was restrained. Reed's gaze swept over the room, unwavering. He didn't flinch at Vivian's screams or Blake's desperate attempts to resist. Every chaotic movement was part of the evidence now being collected, every reaction confirming the guilt already established in Exhibit Z. Judge Wilson's color drained from his face, a ghostly pallor replacing the usual smugness. He stammered, This is illegal. You can't." An agent handed him the federal order. Wilson's hands shook as he took the papers, his eyes scanning the text, realizing that his actions, his bribes, and his manipulation of the court had all been documented, recorded, and now presented under federal authority. "Sir," one agent said softly but firmly, "you are under investigation for corruption, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Step down immediately." Wilson's mouth opened, closed, and finally he exhaled shakily. I resign." His gavel dropped to the floor with a dull thud. The room went silent for a heartbeat, and then the murmurs rose again, a wave of shocked voices breaking the temporary stillness. Meanwhile, Reed remained seated, composed, silent. He watched as Vivian and Blake were handcuffed and escorted toward the exit. Vivian's face twisted in disbelief, rage, and panic all at once. Her pristine appearance was smeared by tears, her hair falling slightly into her eyes. She shouted, "This isn't over. This isn't over, Reed." Reed's expression didn't change. He merely tilted his head slightly and allowed the coldest of smiles to graze his lips, a subtle acknowledgement that the trap he had meticulously designed had worked flawlessly. He didn't gloat, didn't raise his voice. The law was doing the work he had orchestrated. Blake, now fully restrained, cursed under his breath. "You'll regret this," he spat at Reed, eyes wild and unfocused. "You think this is over?" Quiet," Reed said softly, his voice carrying across the room in calm authority. Even in his measured tone, there was a sense of finality that stilled Blake's rage. The courtroom officers guided Blake and Vivian past the astonished attendees, past the press, whose cameras clicked frantically, capturing every moment of the downfall. The sound of the clicking cameras mixed with Vivian's frantic protests, creating a cacophony of chaos that only highlighted Reed's serene composure. With the corrupt parties removed, the session fell hollow, a space awaiting the return of order. That order arrived in the form of Judge Martha Keller. She entered with deliberate authority, her robe sweeping the floor, eyes scanning the courtroom with the clarity and confidence that only decades of judicial experience could cultivate. "Court is now under my jurisdiction," Judge Keller announced, voice firm, precise, leaving no room for interruption. She quickly reviewed the federal orders and warrants, her fingers flipping through documents as she assessed the situation. "Effective immediately, Judge Wilson has stepped down. This court will continue under my supervision." Her presence was commanding, almost magnetic, instilling calm in the room that had been frayed by the sudden storm of arrests and revelations. Lawyers and spectators alike adjusted in their seats, realizing that the trial, though disrupted, would proceed under legitimate judicial oversight. Reed remained seated, his hands folded neatly in front of him, posture impeccable. He did not rise to greet Judge Keller. He did not smile. His expression was neutral, unreadable, a mask perfected over months of planning and deception. Yet the tension in his shoulders had eased slightly. The storm he had orchestrated, the culmination of months of meticulous observation, infiltration, and strategy, had finally broken. Trinity's camera, hidden discreetly in the gallery, panned over the courtroom, capturing every detail. Agents moving Vivin and Blake, the papers delivered to Wilson, Judge Keller assuming control. Damon's monitors confirmed that every digital and audio record had been transmitted securely to federal databases. Mallory's contacts outside were already coordinating with federal prosecutors to ensure the arrests and filings remained airtight. Loretta quietly adjusted her files, readying the remaining evidence for submission under Keller's supervision. The chaos outside the court, the press shouting questions, the murmurs of the gallery, did not faze Reed. He was the eye of the storm, the calm center around which the world had collapsed for Vivin and Blake. In that moment, as the courtroom slowly regained order and Judge Keller assumed full control, Reed Croswell sat, composed, silent, and unyielding. Every betrayal, every stolen dollar, every whispered lie had been captured. Every thread of treachery had been tied into a neat knot, ready to be undone by the law. The storm had broken, leaving only clarity, justice, and Reed's unshakable presence in its wake. Chapter 9. The Reckoning. The morning after the courtroom chaos, the world had shifted in ways Reed Croswell had anticipated but still found satisfying to witness. Headlines screamed across newspapers, websites, and screens. Judge indicted for bribery. Law firm implicated in defense contract fraud. Millionaire's wife and lawyer arrested in multi-million-dollar scheme. Croswell security contract secured. Company stock surges. Reed sipped his coffee in the corner office of Croswell Security, watching the news crawl across 3 monitors simultaneously. Reporters dissected the events in every imaginable way, dissecting the audio, analyzing the federal intervention, highlighting the resignation of Judge Wilson in disgrace. Vivin and Blake were portrayed as the archetypal villains, their arrogance exposed in sharp, public detail. Damon leaned against the glass partition, scrolling through financial reports with meticulous precision. Stocks up 15% in pre-market trading, he said. Clients are calling back. Contracts are getting reinstated. Your reputation? Clean as it's ever been. Reed didn't smile. Not yet. He simply nodded, letting the gravity of months of work settle. He had watched, waited, and calculated every moment to reach this precise point. And now, the machinery of justice had taken its course. Mallory Kent entered the office, her heels silent against the polished concrete floors. She placed a folder on Reed's desk, its contents neatly organized. Indictments, arrest records, detailed summaries of Blake Russo's financial manipulations and Vivin's convictions. 8 years for laundering and obstruction, Mallory said, her voice steady but tinged with satisfaction. Blake's looking at 20 years for fraud and conspiracy. Wilson? Gone. Completely disgraced. She exhaled, leaning back against the desk. It's all over the news. Everyone knows what happened. Reed glanced at the folder, but kept his eyes on the city beyond the windows. They saw only what we allowed them to see. The collapse, the fall, the despair, all staged. Everything else happened quietly, behind the curtain. Trinity Moore, still wearing her leather jacket from the late-night surveillance runs, smirked as she sipped a black coffee. You didn't just expose them. You rewrote the rules. No one saw this coming. They thought they were untouchable. Loretta Torres, sitting at the edge of the desk, tapped a pen rhythmically against her notebook. And you did it without a single slip. Months of planning, and not one hint leaked. Every filing, every motion, every error was perfect bait. You built a trap so precise that even federal agents were impressed. Reed finally turned from the window, his eyes scanning each of them. Damon, Trinity, Mallory, Loretta, his team of confidants, spies, prosecutors and strategists had operated flawlessly. Every step had been executed with discipline and timing that bordered on surgical. "You didn't just win," Mallory said suddenly, her tone measured, a faint grin playing at the corners of her mouth. "You rewrote the game." Reed's lips twitched in the slightest acknowledgement, a smile too faint for outsiders to notice. "We didn't just rewrite the game," he said quietly. "We reminded everyone how it's played. Loyalty, betrayal, and patience. That's the only currency that matters." Trinity shook her head, smiling faintly. "I still can't believe they thought they were smarter than us." Vivian and Blake, the arrogance, the carelessness. It was delicious to watch them fall without realizing how close we were the whole time. Damon chuckled, tapping at a keyboard as he confirmed the final financial reconciliations. All transfers accounted for. Every offshore account frozen or reclaimed. The evidence is filed, digital backups stored in secure federal servers. Anything they touch from this point forward is already compromised. Loretta crossed her arms, her gaze steady. "And now? What happens next?" Reed leaned back, letting the weight of months of planning finally rest on his shoulders for a moment. "Justice has been served. Contracts reinstated, assets secure, and the people who tried to destroy me are either in prison or disgraced." Mallory's grin widened. "You make it sound so clean, but I know better. The months of patience, watching, listening, I've never seen someone so meticulous. Even the FBI said your sting operation was textbook." Trinity smirked. "It's rare to see someone orchestrate chaos with this level of precision. You made them believe they were hunting, when in reality, we were already inside their den, tracking every move, documenting every lie. They never even suspected." Reed's eyes drifted toward the horizon beyond the glass, the city alive but oblivious to the meticulous justice that had just played out. "I didn't do this for victory. I did it because betrayal cannot be ignored. It cannot be allowed to fester, and it cannot be rewarded." Damon leaned back, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "And yet, people will say you acted like a broken man the whole time. Everyone bought it, the press, the investors, even Vivian herself. You sold the illusion perfectly." Reed nodded once. "A mask is only effective if it's complete. The world only sees what it's supposed to see. Weakness, despair, collapse. The truth is reserved for those who know where to look." Loretta added softly. "And in this case, those who needed to see the truth, federal authorities, the courts, the public record, saw it in full force. Not a single loophole left. Not a single thread untouched." Mallory's gaze met Reed's. "You didn't just rewrite the game. You set a precedent. Anyone trying to pull a similar scheme now has a blueprint of how easily hubris can be undone." Reed's voice was quiet, almost reflective. "It's not about rewriting the game for others. It's about showing what happens when loyalty is shattered and betrayal is rewarded. I didn't move out of anger. I moved out of necessity and precision." Trinity raised her cup in a small, private toast. "To precision, to patience, to justice served cold." Reed allowed himself the smallest nod. "To the team. Without every one of you, none of this would have worked. Damon, Trinity, Mallory, Loretta, every step, every observation, every careful move led us here. This is as much your victory as mine." Damon smirked. "I'll take that credit. But mostly, I'll enjoy watching Blake and Vivian try to explain themselves from behind bars." Loretta's lips quirked. "And Wilson. Don't forget Wilson. Public disgrace is a slow, painful kind of justice. He'll be remembered for what he was, not what he pretended to be." Reed's gaze softened slightly, not with sentimentality, but with recognition. The months of planning, the tension, the personal betrayal had been exhausting mentally, emotionally, and strategically. And yet, here they were. Victory wasn't celebrated with fanfare. It was measured, precise, and silent. The public would read about the arrests and convictions. The news would replay the audio and describe the fall of a millionaire's corrupt adversaries. But Reed and his team knew the depth of the operation, the patience, the preparation, the orchestration that no headline could capture. Mallory finally stood, closing her laptop with a soft click. "Well, Reed, I suppose all that remains is the quiet part. The part where we watch the world adjust to the new order you've set. Reed leaned back, arms folded once again, letting the weight of months of meticulous planning and calculated patience settle over him. And watch it adjust it will. But let's remember, victory is never in the noise. It's in the calm, in the evidence, in the strategy. And that is ours. They sat together for a long moment in silence, letting the reality sink in. Outside, the city buzzed with business as usual, oblivious to the meticulous unraveling and reconstruction of power, influence, and justice that had just taken place. Mallory finally broke the silence, her voice firm but tinged with admiration. You didn't just win. You rewrote the game. Reed's eyes met hers. Calm, composed, silent. And in that quiet, final acknowledgement, the weight of months of planning, betrayal, and patience found its closure. Chapter 10. The Quiet Sunset. The Pacific coast stretched endlessly beneath the fading light of day, waves crashing rhythmically against jagged rocks, sending up plumes of mist that caught the golden sun like liquid fire. Reed Crosswell's hands rested lightly on the wheel of his 1967 Mustang, the classic car's engine purring with a steady hum. The vehicle was immaculate, polished to a mirror sheen, reflecting the dying sun across its hood. He drove slowly, letting the rhythm of the road match the ebb and flow of the ocean beside him. Inside the car, the air was scented faintly with leather and salt spray from the nearby cliffs. Reed's eyes scanned the horizon, the wind tousling his hair, the faint orange glow brushing across his face. For the first time in months, the tension that had shadowed him like a second skin was easing. The long months of betrayal, deception, and strategic patience had culminated in justice, exact, precise, and unassailable. His phone buzzed quietly on the console. Reed didn't glance down immediately. He kept his gaze forward, observing the way the waves collided against the shore, the distant cries of seabirds carried faintly on the wind. The device buzzed again. Finally, Reed picked it up. On the line was Mallory Kent. Her voice was calm, but with an edge of restrained triumph. "Reed," she said, "just got word from the federal office. Blake Russo's plea deal completely collapsed. Vivian refused to testify against him. So both of them are going to serve the full sentences. 8 years for her, 20 for him." Reed's jaw tightened subtly. He said nothing, letting the words settle into the quiet hum of the engine and the distant roar of the surf. He turned the wheel gently, the Mustang's tires whispering against the asphalt. Mallory continued, unaware of his silence. "The courts are wrapping up the filings. Wilson's resignation is final, and the Judicial Review Board is reviewing every corrupt decision he ever made. Your company's contracts are fully reinstated. Your stock is stabilized. You've been cleared in every investigation. Everything you've built, intact, even stronger than before." Reed exhaled slowly, the corners of his mouth lifting just slightly, though not into a smile. It was the faintest acknowledgement of the victory, not for public spectacle, not for recognition, but for the quiet satisfaction of justice done. "Good," he said finally, voice low, even steady. "Thank you for the update." There was a pause on the line, a small, almost imperceptible exhale. "No problem. I just wanted you to hear it directly. Feels like the final piece is falling into place." Reed listened to the sound of the ocean through the speaker, waves crashing rhythmically, carrying with them an almost meditative cadence. He let Mallory speak a little longer, explaining the finer points of the final filings, the official notices, the completion of federal oversight. Every detail reinforced the truth he had worked to construct. That betrayal carries consequences, and patience can be the deadliest weapon of all. Finally, he whispered, almost to himself, letting the words drift into the hum of the Mustang and the vastness of the coastline. "Loyalty isn't negotiable. Neither is betrayal." The statement wasn't for Mallory. It wasn't for anyone else. It was for him. A quiet acknowledgement of everything he had endured, everything he had sacrificed, and everything he had orchestrated. A mantra, a closure, a truth crystallized by months of calculation and unwavering discipline. He ended the call, slipping the phone back into console. His hands gripped the wheel lightly, rhythmically, following the curves of the road. The setting sun painted the ocean in a golden hue, the horizon stretching endlessly as if to promise infinite possibilities. For the first time in months, Reed felt no anger, no desire for vengeance, no lingering bitterness. The storms of betrayal had passed. Now remained only clarity, precision, and the quiet triumph of survival and justice. The Mustang's engine hummed in a low purr, harmonizing with the sound of the waves. Reed's thoughts were distant, drifting like the gulls skimming the water below, letting the recent months unfold in his mind as a silent review of strategy and patience. Each betrayal he had endured, each slight, each miscalculation by his adversaries had been recorded, analyzed, and then turned against them. The victories were measured, exacting, and undeniable. Reed leaned slightly back in his seat, the wind sweeping across his face, and for a moment he closed his eyes. The scent of salt, the distant cry of seabirds, the faint roar of the surf, all of it grounded him. There were no celebrations, no champagne, no media attention. There was only this quiet moment, this private acknowledgement of the long game won. The road stretched before him, winding along cliffs that dropped sharply to the relentless ocean below. The Mustang's tires hugged the asphalt as Reed drove on, the horizon slowly fading from gold to deep orange, the last traces of sun slipping behind distant clouds. It was a journey of calm, deliberate motion, the kind of measured travel that mirrored the precision of his revenge, not impulsive, not vengeful, but inevitable. From the corner of his eye, Reed could see the cliffs bathed in golden light, waves spraying foam high into the sky. The air was crisp, the scent of salt and wildflowers mingling in the breeze. He let himself absorb it all, the vastness of the ocean, the endless stretch of road, the quiet power of the sunset. For Reed, victory had never been about spectacle. It had never been about gloating or revenge in its most obvious form. It had always been about justice delivered with precision, about consequences realized without haste, about loyalty honored and betrayal punished in a way that left nothing to chance. And now, as the Mustang carried him along the cliffside, with the sun dipping slowly into the horizon, he felt the weight of that achievement settle fully into his bones. The quiet triumph was absolute. The Mustang's engine thrummed like a heartbeat, steady and enduring. Reed's eyes flicked briefly to the rearview mirror, the coastline disappearing behind him, a reminder that the past, Vivian, Blake, Wilson, the betrayal, the lies was behind him now. The road ahead was open, unbroken, and endless. He pressed lightly on the accelerator, the car responding smoothly, carrying him forward. The sky above was streaked with fading gold and violet, the light reflecting off the water in delicate patterns. Reed felt a rare stillness, a calm that was earned, not given. Finally, he whispered again, this time just for himself. Loyalty isn't negotiable. Neither is betrayal. No one hurt him. No one needed to. The sound of the waves, the hum of the Mustang, and the fading light were enough to carry the truth. Reed drove on. No smile. No vengeance. Only calm. Only clarity. Only the hard-earned peace of a man who had lost everything and rebuilt it with patience, precision, and methodical justice. The road stretched toward the horizon, fading slowly into the golden light. The camera, in the mind's eye, lingers on the scene. A classic Mustang gliding along the cliffs, the Pacific Ocean on one side, the sky ablaze with sunset, and Reed Crosswell, finally free, finally unburdened, finally the master of his own destiny.